Our theme this month is Reaping the Harvest, in keeping with the autumn time of the year. And today our topic is Reaping the Harvest in the Present. Last week we talked about how in our lives we sow the seeds of choice and intention. We water, we cultivate, we weed and nurture them in preparation for this moment, the now moment, when we harvest the fruits of our labor, that is, our dreams, our desires, our demonstrations of that work into our lives. So this then is intended to be a joyous, a happy, satisfying, and successful experience. Our lives are made richer, more comfortable, secure. And that is, of course, if we include in that celebration of the harvest our acceptance of that which we have brought into real time as the knitting together the loop of circulation. Remember, circulation, giving and receiving, and giving and receiving. This is a universal law of circulation. And one of the most important parts of this knitting together, the loop of circulation, is our recognition that it's the constant rotation of giving and receiving. Constant rotation of giving and receiving. It's always in motion. That universal law is something that I'm grateful for every day. How I use it is my acceptance of its eternal function. You see the difference? I am grateful that that law is in existence and that I can use it. And how I use it is my acceptance of its eternal function. This month's Science of Mind magazine, which Kim used a few moments earlier for an affirmative affirmation, it's full of articles about gratitude. And what it advertises is the big benefits of gratitude. Dr. Ken Gordon, who is Center for Spiritual Living's spiritual leader and has been for some time now, quoted an adage from one of his teachers who was a giant in science of mind, Dr. Tom Costa, who stood in shoes about 5 feet 2 inches tall and weighed maybe 110, 120 pounds, but a giant in consciousness. And Dr. Costa reminds us in this monthly article by Dr. Ken that it is impossible to be unhappy and grateful at the same time. It's impossible to be unhappy and grateful at the same time. Well, that may sound like a slam dunk to you, but when we really consider that, it has a much deeper meaning and a call to sacred practice. Sometimes in the present moment, we may experience dissatisfaction, disconnection, sadness, loss of desire or intention. It happens. And when this happens, though we may be affirming and doing spiritual mind treatment, it doesn't seem to be working. So when that occurs in our lives, as Dr. Ken described it did for him one time, he contacted his spiritual mind treatment practitioner. And he said firmly to his practitioner, I want to do something now to solve my dilemma. So what do you suppose his practitioner said to him? And if you've already read this article, you're way ahead of me here, and good on you. And if you haven't, go back and read the article. If you don't have this month's, we have some over there. But read that article. So here's what his practitioner said to him. Number one, start a gratitude journal. Well, yeah, how many times have you heard that in this room? And in class, if you take classes, and in our midweek gatherings, if you go to those. Start or return to a gratitude journal daily and do it without fail. The second thing his practitioner said to him is do something new. Do something different. Take a class. Teach a class. Cook new dishes. Write an article. Paint a picture. Host an evening of something fun that you've never experienced elsewhere. But do something new that you are not currently doing, or perhaps have never done before. And then number 3, his practitioner said to him, be faithful about doing your prayer work, your spiritual practice, for something bigger than yourself. Like Lloyd Strom has said so many times, when what you're doing your spiritual practice about isn't showing up, try something bigger. Get a bigger idea. Expand on an outcome. Or something bigger than yourself. So what that means is to step boldly out of the same old stuff and begin to imagine a bigger, better, more satisfying present moment for yourself. Well, all of these are so important, as Catherine Ponder has reminded us. And the first one, the gratitude journal, is imperative. When we bring into the present moment all that has already been bestowed upon us, and we do that daily without repeating, we quickly find so much good, even in the challenges that we've experienced. You know, we forget. We have that capacity to put behind us what's behind us. And you hear me say frequently, bring the past into the present only to the degree that it opens and lifts your consciousness to broader and greater things. So the same is true here. When we bring into the present moment all that has already been bestowed upon us in gratitude, we bring it forward, and we do that daily, we quickly find so much good, even in the challenges we've experienced. In Julia Cameron's article in the Science of Mind, and many of you will remember Julia Cameron from The Artist's Way, which was her original book. There are several others that she's written since then, and a new one about to come out. But this is a familiar name to us in Science of Mind. And in her article, she says of Ernest Holmes, he is the modest master, the spiritual magician who transforms trouble into that magical creature, opportunity. She also credits him with reminding her that, and this is a quote, we are intended to be larger and more free. When we listen to the divine presence, it directs and guides us. Right thoughts and ideas come to us, and we are compelled to express them in our experience. You know, and there are a couple of you, actually there are 3 of you in the room this morning, who are taking the Principles of Financial Freedom class. And in that class, we have a kind of a mantra, a touchstone that we use to measure the right thoughts and ideas which come to us. And here it is. If this were true for me, would I be more free? If this were true for me, would I be more free? And this, as you know, is the process of defining which is wishful thinking and which is intuition. So when I am working on a challenge and supporting it and turning into an opportunity, this is one of the touchstones that I use. If this were true for me, would I be more free? So I want to share with you a vignette from this little book called A Cup of Comfort for Inspiration by Colleen Sell. I've had this book for a long time. You can tell to look at it, the pages are beginning to yellow. But it's very inspiring for me in a number of ways, not the least of which is the last day that I was a member of the Center for Spiritual Living in San Juan Capistrano, California, because I had answered a letter of call to go to the San Diego Center for Spiritual Living. Dr. Heather Clark, who is the senior minister at San Juan Capistrano, called me up to the podium, and this is one of 3 books that she handed me as a gift, and I use all 3 of them for references ongoing. There's just so much in them, and you don't realize at the time. You know, you may sit down and do this through it and read 1 or 2 of them, but I can pick any one of those 3 books up and find something of value to share with you. What wonderful gifts. Don't forget about these kinds of things as gifts at Christmas time. Maybe not this one in particular, but ones that inspire you to share with people that you would like to know more about this teaching and don't really want to put pressure on. So this story is from that book by Colleen Sells. This is the story of a man, and it's a true story, who owned a little hamburger joint, you know, a diner, on a dead-end street in Alpine, Texas, which is not one of the larger cities in the state of Texas. And often he stayed open late at night to catch the college crowd when they needed sustenance after late night studying. In fact, he himself was a student at the small college in that town, so he understood that. So this particular night, as he was cleaning up and preparing to close, he noticed a stranger outside staring at him through the window. And so he poured himself a cup of coffee. It was pretty stale, been on the burner for quite a while, but poured himself a cup of coffee, and he sat down to wait for this hobo to move on before he left the diner. He was about to give in and leave when a large pickup truck pulled into the parking lot, and one of his regular customers, a man about 6 feet 3 inches tall and about 290 pounds, stepped out of the pickup. He came to the door, knocked, and when Bill came to the door, he asked if Bill had a copy of the notes for their geology class because they had a test coming up, and Blocker, this man who looked like a blocker, had loaned his notes to somebody else and hadn't gotten them back. So Bill invited him inside and went to look for his notes, and Blocker said to him, "Who's that skinny little guy standing out there? He's out there in the dark." And Bill looked outside, and the skinny little guy didn't look nearly as menacing as he did before Blocker showed up. Little guy's jacket was thin and threadbare. It was really inadequate for that cold night. His battered suitcase was tied with a rope just to hold it closed. So Bill, in an attempt to look unconcerned, lied to Blocker. He said, "I was just about to invite him in for a cup of coffee when you drove up." So Blocker went to the door, opened it, and shouted out into the dark, cold night, "Hey, mister, come on in and get warm." So the man obliged, thanking them while he warmed his hands over the stove and accepted the coffee. He explained that a railroad cop had thrown him off the train, and he had no idea where he was, what this little town was. It was dark. He went on to say that he was on his way to South Texas, where he had family who had a job as a mechanic waiting for him. So Bill reached into this bag of hamburgers that he was about to deliver to the college dorm and gave this fellow one. Then he asked if the man had a place to stay that night. "No," was the response. No surprise there. So Bill walked to a closet. He took out a bedroll, and he told the man that he could stay there in the diner that night. He also let him know that Another freight train would be coming through about daylight, and that he could undoubtedly catch that train south. So it was barely daylight when Bill woke up in his dorm room and heard the train whistle, and so he hurriedly dressed and he hurried on down to his diner. And the man was gone. Coffee pot had been washed. There was a clean cup sitting right next to it on the counter. Bedroll was tied and put away in the closet where it had been originally. And on a napkin, in scrawling, kind of childlike writing, was a note. And the note said, "You are a good man. I won't forget." Now, fast forward 11 years to Corpus Christi in southern Texas. Bill is married now with a little daughter. He works for an oil company, and very early on a cold, windy morning is on his way to San Antonio for a meeting. About 2 hours after leaving home, in a very unpopulated area on a lonely road, his car develops engine trouble. A quick look under the hood confirms that he has a broken fan belt, which is something you should not continue driving with. He looks around for help, and he sees a sign pointing down a dusty side road, George, West Texas. Doesn't sound very big, does it? But since he had no other alternative, he turned down that road and he began driving ever so slowly and cautiously, hoping that he could find a garage before he blew a head gasket. Over the sounds of the radiator boiling, and if any of you have ever been in a car with a radiator boiling, you know what that sounds like and looks like. He saw a sign which read, "Auto Repair." It was closed, but there was an emergency number posted on the window. So he walked across the street to an open cafe and called that number. Soon a pickup arrives, and a heavy-set man emerges. He looks at the car and he says to Bill, "Just go back over to the cafe there and have a cup of coffee. This won't take long." And sure enough, as Bill was finishing up a plate of bacon and eggs, the mechanic came in, sat down next to him, and ordered a cup of coffee. Bill was very appreciative, and he said to the man, "How much do I owe you?" And his reply was this: "You ever run a cafe in Alpine?" Surprised, Bill nodded. "Yes." "Then you don't owe me anything. Your breakfast is on me. And so is the repair." So Bill studied his face for a minute, and then he smiled. He said, "You know, I didn't recognize you. You must have caught that train." And the man said, "Yeah, I caught it. And I've put on some weight since then. Eating regularly will do that." "Wow," Bill said. "How long has it been? 10 years? 11. I don't forget things like that." So it's unusual when we get to return kindness directly to the one who offered it first. But gratitude in our hearts will always provide us an opportunity to return the favor to someone, somewhere, sometime. We never know exactly when or where or even how. That's one of the reasons to stay in gratitude every day, all the time. This law of circulation represents reception and release, giving and accepting. And when we prosper others, we are always prospered in return. That's not why we do it, but that is an inevitable response because of the law of circulation. As we give of our prosperity, in whatever measure that is, however that shows up, We create a space, a vacuum, a void, as Catherine Ponder talks about, that begs to be filled. And so that very thing then flows into that void. So what if you have difficulty accepting that this is so for you? Then consider that disbelief is born of resistance and is defined as obeying our fears instead of the truth. It's a pattern of survival which is born of past experience, and it gives rise to a strategy of protection. These strategies are usually created out of a misunderstanding of the original situation for any of a myriad of reasons. And that's why we do the work here, to correct those past errors, which often are more about misunderstanding than they are about misbehavior. And if you don't think that's true, I'll sit with you one-on-one and describe for you the experiences I've had with my now adult daughters as I've explored those things from my past that I felt I needed to apologize to them or ask for their forgiveness or enlist their support, and how differently they have viewed those things or forgotten those things that to me had major proportions for me to make right. It's the most amazing thing, and it's the most amazing gift as well. So what we are sowing in our minds is what we are reaping. The experiences in our lives, and how important it is to recognize those experiences as opportunities. So here's how staying in the now supports our reaping the harvest of good. We don't have to suffer through difficult experiences. We can grow through direct insight. And here are 3 ways that we can do that. A, develop and maintain a clearer recognition of our oneness with God, Spirit, divine source. Need is your soul saying there's more of you to be expressed, to see more, to reveal more, to be more of your real self in the expression. Need is potential within that which has not yet been actualized. Do you see the difference between how need is generally expressed in the major population as being without something, of being not enough? Here's a whole different approach to that. Need is a potential within that which has not yet been actualized. I need to let that flow from me as an expression, not as a void or an absence. Here's the second one. Beginning with a consciousness of acceptance, appreciation, and gratitude, hang out there, up level from there. Release cynicism, that is, little faith in the integrity or sincerity of others. Release callousness, that is, insensitivity or cruelty toward others. Begin with a consciousness of acceptance, appreciation, gratitude. And then here's the third thought about this. Beginning where we are and looking at our own perceptions, which are the only perceptions we can look at with any background of experience. Trusting that where we are is exactly where we are supposed to be in this moment. Trust that. And remembering that all our experiences and perceptions have brought us to this moment, so that we can choose from this moment on to do more, to have more, to be more in loving, harmonious, and peaceful ways. So we acknowledge, we bless all that has brought us to this present moment, even what perhaps is not comfortable from our past. But it's brought us to this moment and to this awareness that we can choose to do more, to have more, to be more. Remember what Ernest Holmes reminds us. There is no great or small in the mind of God. There are only gradations of quality based on our level of consciousness. If that's the only thing you take away from this talk this morning, let it be that. There is no great or small in the mind of God. There are only gradations of quality based on our level of consciousness. So, in closing, golly, I didn't bring that book. I'll bring it next week. I want to quote Dr. Stuart Grayson, who was one of our senior ministers at the New York Church for a number of years. And he wrote a book called The 10 Demandments of Prosperity. And if that kind of makes you squirm, demandments, read the book, because it's fabulous. Here's what he said. Be open. Be positive. Be willing to give and to accept and to receive. The divine mind that God is accepts your desire for greater wealth, greater health, greater love, greater self-expression. You fulfill your claim by participating fully in the universal law of circulation. Participating fully, giving and receiving, always moving. You can't outgive God. But I challenge you right here and now, try it. You're going to love the results. I guarantee it. And so it is.